Okay, well, welcome everybody. Call to order. I would like to have an approval of the minutes from the January 15 meeting. Madam Secretary.
Ms. Bates, we have to do the attendance first.
Oh, call to order. Oh, we have to put that on the agenda. Thank you. Please call attendance, Madam Secretary.
Present.
Allen? Caius?
Caius present.
Molina?
Molina present.
Strathman?
Strathman present.
Weber?
Physically present.
Shepro? Okay, Pirog? And Bates.
Present.
You have a
Thank
quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. May I have a motion to approve the minutes from January 15th?
Caius move.
Strathman seconds.
Thank you. Caius moves, Strathman second. Any discussion about the minutes? Madam Secretary, please call the roll.
Allen? Caius?
Caius, yes.
Molina?
Molina, yes.
Strathman?
Strathman, yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Warnicki?
Warnicki, yes.
Bates?
Yes. Bates, yes. Okay, thank you very much. So we will start into our agenda. Jody Wolnick will be, Jody, are you here?
I am here.
Okay. With the presentation of, you can present Kevin Burns.
Thank you. The presentation today, we have two speakers, Mayor Kevin Burns and Edith Macra, representing the Metropolitan's Mayor's Caucus. We're very excited to have them here today. So thank you both. And they're going to be speaking on the Regional Climate Action Planning. Blair, if you guys are able to advance the slides for them, I would appreciate it. Thank you.
So I just want to say how excited we are to have Edith and Kevin here today, because the Climate Action Plan is part of our goals and priorities for 2021. So I was just trying to figure out how do you write a climate action plan when I found out you're already writing one. So thanks for being here today to talk about that and about the global covenant of mayors. We're excited to have you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Madam Chair and members of the committee, good morning. And again, thank you very, very much for allowing myself and my colleague Edith Macra to be with you on this Friday. A happy Friday to you all. The weather is supposed to be in the low 20s, so we are heading in the right direction in terms of bitter cold. We are going to spend a little bit of time with respect to some history about the Greenest Region Compact, and then of course the Climate Action Plan. Let me say from the beginning that Edith Macra, my colleague with the Metropolitan's Mayor Caucus, is the expert and the subject matter expert on all of this. I have the honor of working with Edith in terms of outreach and connecting with communities throughout the region. You will notice on, I believe, the next slide, or perhaps the slide after, and Edith will touch on this, we are the largest voluntary sustainability cohort in the country. This slide will show you that there are 275 communities throughout the Chicagoland region that make up the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus, representing well over 6 million people. And again, we are one of 4 cohorts in the United States working with our friends in Europe to develop this climate action plan, the first ever for the Chicago region. It's my pleasure to be a small part of this, and of course to introduce all of you to my colleague, my friend, and the subject matter expert, Edith Macra, who's going to walk us through exactly how we achieve this very, I think, aggressive but necessary goal. So,
Kevin, may I ask a question, please?
Please do.
I see 5.
Well,
I can explain.
You can explain,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, thank you, Edith.
We actually annexed Washington, D.C., so they're no longer.
Okay, I'm really good at math.
Yeah, clearly. So Edith will explain exactly that. There was a drop off and then an add-on, so.
Okay, now here's Edith. Thank you, Edith.
Great.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the invitation to share. It's a pleasure to be with you, and I just really want to underscore what Mayor Burns said about the Greenest Region Compact Collaborative, and want to again thank Kane County for being the very first county to come forward and join the Greenest Region Compact. Kevin and I spoke to this committee when you joined. So, and that was Earth Day a year or two ago. Maybe it's going on two.
Two ago, because last year we were all in our houses during Earth Day. So.
This is true. So, and that was pioneering. And I just wanted to not underscore, but maybe soften a little bit the expertise that Kevin pointed to, because it's very pioneering. So thank you for joining with us and for finding value in this plan. But, and the 4 or 5 points is actually underscores the challenge of this pioneering. So some background and context for why we're doing this project, because as Kevin said, we are the largest regional sustainability collaborative for municipalities. We drew the attention of the European Union, which is the agency that is supporting the Global Covenant of Mayors through an organization they call International Urban Cooperation. That's a lot of partnerships, but in short, Europe and the rest of the other parts of the world are doing regional climate planning, and it's new in the US. So they were seeking partnerships. We, because of our size and momentum, we're selected as one of 4 initial pioneers in this project to pioneer regional climate planning. One of them didn't make it because it's not that easy to do as it works out, and none of us are experts because it's new for us in the US. So that explains Denver dropped out, and then the Twin Cities joined late. So Kevin was correct in that. So this project brought with it some prestige and technical assistance. Did not bring any funding, but it was really fun to be a part of this planning cohort in the US. So next slide, please. And so the initiative was to cultivate leadership in the region and provide support so that the region could comply with the global covenants of mayors for climate and energy. And just for context, in Illinois, there are only 5 cities that have committed to the global covenant of mayors. And then you have to go through all of these individual steps. And you can see on the slide there are a lot of required steps in order to earn badges and be compliant with the global covenant of mayors. This is a very heavy lift for most municipalities and counties. And the regional approach leverages expertise, momentum, shared approaches and collaboration to getting this work done. So this is what we undertook as a region. And I have to say our primary partner on this was the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning. And we were thrilled to pick up the support and partnership of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Agency, or NOAA, for their Steps to Resilience and Climate Planning Office as we undertook the project. So the steps that you see there in blue are the ones that were completed, and they will come out as I go through the presentation, so we don't need to go through them. But the Climate Action Plan, which includes both climate mitigation and adaptation, is the step we're in now. I highlight that last point in yellow that says we will be reporting on an ongoing basis. So this is an important part of the GCOM commitment. We use a global platform that is employed by 8,000 companies around the world for sort of high standards for targets and performance. So next slide, please. And to begin with, this was we held a series of workshops. This began in October 2019. And as you look carefully in the pictures, we were thrilled to have participation of many members of Kane County there. So you see Jessica Mino and in the forefront, and Karen Miller was at the meeting, as was Mavis. So we had these workshops. The first kickoff was for the mitigation workshop at CMAP. And the idea was to start to pull together collective thinking on how to approach this, where to set targets and how to develop the strategies. Of course, we had to pivot to an online engagement, and we did most of our climate adaptation workshops virtually. In all, we had strong participation throughout the region. You can see the number of organizations there. So it really was a regional collaborative approach to developing this plan. Next slide, please. So just to be clear, when we talk about climate action or a climate action plan, they're often called CAPs. They consist of two major components. The first is mitigation, which is reducing greenhouse gas emissions. And to me, that feels like the more familiar one. For our region, it seems like we have better understanding and have made better progress on the mitigation side. Adaptation is a little bit new to us, and this is where we were thrilled to get some assistance in preparing for the impacts of climate change that we can't avoid. And that came to us again through the NOAA Steps to Resilience team. Next slide, please. And so for both of those two sections, they are fundamentally built on an analysis. And on the climate mitigation side, the analysis was the greenhouse gas inventory, and then a series of projections and modeling to look at how those emissions need to change in order to stabilize the climate. And the inventory, which was completed by CMAP previous to this project, this is one of the things that allowed us to accelerate to complete the project so quickly. This was done in 2015. The majority, the highest proportion by far of all of our emissions are related to stationary energy or that from buildings. And within that category, it was really interesting to note that residential energy is sort of the next target area, 26%. You'll see transportation is high. That proportion is higher elsewhere in the country than it is in our region, because as Kevin pointed out, we have really lovely weather in Chicago and use a lot of building energy. So that's why and we have a good transportation system. So transportation is not outsized as it is in other parts of the country. There are smaller categories for emissions that are related to waste, and the mitigation objectives that we then developed includes ways to manage greenhouse gas emissions, including land use strategies. So the analysis of the greenhouse gas emissions, we set a target in line with the Paris Agreement and with other Global Covenant of Mayors participants to reduce greenhouse gas emissions 80% by 2050. And this is for the first plan. We feel that this is a target that's realistic. It's challenging, as you'll see going forward, but it's a first step. It doesn't mean that it's a baseline. It doesn't mean that we couldn't move towards net zero with subsequent plans. But for the first initiative, where we're at right now, 80% by 2050 is a target we feel pretty good about. Next slide, please. So the mitigation objectives then, and there are 8 of them that are how we get to 80% reduction for the greenhouse gas emissions. And I'm not going to read through all of them, but I will bucket them for you. So there is using less energy. We call that the little plain talk bubble there. Building energy efficiency and clean energy policies is a really important way to drive down energy use, particularly for the stationary energy. The number 3, decarbonize energy sources, is cleaner energy. This is actually a huge lift for us in the region, because so much of our ability to achieve that goal relies on a clean energy grid, and that's really beyond the control of municipalities and local governments. So that's an all hands on deck effort to shift to cleaner energy sources. The next 2, whoops, I should probably keep going. So there's more bullets there where we're low on time. There's transportation strategies. There are 2 categories that have to do with the 7 and 8 that have to do with leadership and sequestering carbon, relying on nature. These are actually complementary to greenhouse gas emissions reduction. So they don't result in measurable reductions, but they're absolutely essential to get where we need to be. So next slide, please. To climate adaptation, so same format, the analysis was called a climate risk and vulnerability assessment, and then stakeholder prioritization. And this is dialogues that we had with 4 workshops that were facilitated by NOAA to help us identify what they call climate hazards, and those are on the slide there in green, and the impacts. So these are, how does this impact assets and things that we love, people and infrastructure and resources in our community. So we arranged our plan around these hazard impact pairs, they're called, with a goal to embed climate resilience in local governance by 2050. Equity is a big part of all of the climate adaptation and is really prominent and really the key point with climate adaptation. Next slide. And so the what I liked about the climate adaptation, or it's also used the term resilience, and that little diagram there shows that with efforts and planning, a community can bounce forward, if you follow the green line on the more resilient side, with being prepared and cultivating inclusive communities and strengthened communities that you can see in the 5 climate adaptation objectives. The thing that I liked about these, when it says collaborate and build capacity, enact plans and policies, these are things that municipalities already know how to do. So next slide, please. So where we're at with the plan is we are in the final stretches. So we're designing the document. We expect to have it released next month, we hope. From that, we will then move forward with an update to the Greenest Region Compact to make sure that it aligns well with the climate action plan. And then we're looking forward to community implementation. And as you can see in the green square there, we'll be a part of the Global Covenant of Mayors into the future. So just the last 2 slides are shout outs on or call outs for what this means. What do the strategies mean in the climate action plan? And I wanted to point out, so the mitigation strategy objective there is to engage residential and commercial property owners to optimize building energy efficiency. And that is specifically what Kane County is doing with their CPACE program is exactly what needs to be done. On the residential side, the Mayor's Caucus has a new grant, and we're working to provide information that's clear, straightforward, and we're spoon feeding it to local governments so that they can engage their residents in taking advantage of these energy efficiency programs. And next to last slide then is related to transportation. So the idea of accelerating clean transportation for EV charging. This is just to point out that we've done some work on this. We're in phase 1 of a project we're calling EV Ready that will allow local governments to do the preparatory planning and policy work so that EV infrastructure can thrive. And this is built along the format of SolSmart, which also Kane County is a SolSmart designee. So this is copying that successful model to build out EV charging infrastructure. And so with that, I'm a tad long. I let Mayor Burns close if he has a few closing comments.
Well, I just want to add my congratulations to our friends at Kane County for the big news appearing in this morning's Kane County Connects newsletter regarding the desire and I believe the goal and plan to build all future buildings or remodel all future buildings based on LEED certification. So that's pretty cool. Very
Yes.
cool. Yeah.
I owe that to my staff. We have our green building policy in place, and it was approved by the entire board, so that's exciting too.
Very exciting.
Yay! So we'll be ready for the next exciting episode of what Kane County can do to stay green. So I want to work with you, Edith and Kevin, to know and to work on adapting this to a Kane County plan. Okay. And who do I call? Edith? Is that your?
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, either or, but of course,
okay.
Madam Chair, you have my cell phone. By all means, if you ever need to kibitz about anything, call me.
Okay.
Obviously, we're close by. But of course, I always refer to and coordinate with Edith since, as obvious by the presentation, she knows far more than I do. So.
Well, okay, Kevin, I do have your cell. Well, I think I have Edith's cell phone too. But thank you for that, and I think this is wonderful. I appreciate both of you coming to talk to us today, and it's really exciting. So thank you very much for your presentation.
Madam Chair, if I may say one more thing, I want to congratulate the professional staff you have there at Kane County. They are not only wonderful to work with, they're good people who care deeply about this issue, and it's a true pleasure working with them. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm very proud of them and grateful. So, okay, let's move on our agenda. Thank you, Edith and Kevin.
Thank you.
So Jennifer, you are up next for recycling and solid waste.
Thank you. So we have a presentation on the siting ordinance revision that is going to be given by a guest speaker, Christina Siebert. She is a consultant with Aptum Environmental, who helped us to draft the recently approved 2020 solid waste plan. This is attached to that process because it is referred to in the solid waste plan, this siting ordinance. I'll let Christina do the explaining about what it's about and why we have chosen to do some updates on it at this time. Christina?
Thank you, Jennifer. If we can maybe jump to the presentation real quick here, what's on your screen and in your packets, starting on page 15 in your packet is the red line version of the ordinance revisions. And then there's a clean version also if you want to review it without seeing what all of the changes necessarily were, just read it in whole. Starts on page 43 in your packet. But I think if we jump to somewhere around page 70 or so in the packet, we might get to the presentation slides that we're going to go through. And while that's getting pulled up, just to give a little bit of background, I'm going to go through this a little bit fast today. The changes really are, they're going to look like a lot when you scroll through the red line. But I think when you read through it, it is a lot of verbiage change and some cleanup. So if we can just back up a couple of slides here, probably one or two. This one is perfect. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So what we're talking about here, what is a pollution control facility first? These are facilities that handle waste for the most part. So they're defined in the Environmental Protection Act as a waste storage site, sanitary landfill, waste disposal site, transfer station, treatment facility, or waste incinerator. But there are a lot of exceptions to what's considered a pollution control facility also. So it doesn't include all of our waste facilities that we see. And in Kane County, historically, this has really meant landfills and transfer stations. Things that are excluded from the definition of pollution control facility would be your landscape waste composting facilities, landscape waste transfer stations, construction and demolition recycling facilities, provided that they're meeting the threshold targets for how much material they're recycling. Any facility that manages materials that are generated on that same site. And then there are a number of other exclusions within the Act. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So what does it mean if you're a pollution control facility? If you are looking to develop a facility or make significant changes to a facility, you have to have siting approval from your local host jurisdiction. So local siting approval is governed by Section 39.2 of the Environmental Protection Act. And it gives certain standards that have to be met. There are 9 specific siting criteria that are laid out in there. And those are things like, is the facility necessary? Does it comply with land use? And does it protect property values? Is it going to be designed and operated to protect public health, safety, and welfare? A lot of the same types of criteria that we see in typical zoning processes, but it's kind of zoning on steroids. There's some heavier lift that you have to make when you are going to be handling waste at a facility. And the requirements in 39.2 specify what the applicant needs to do. And it also specifies what the siting authority needs to do. So the siting authority is going to be either a municipality if it's in an incorporated area, or it's Kane County if it's any unincorporated area of the county. And in order to expound upon the rules that are set out in statute by the state and to make things particular to what the county is looking to require of applicants, the county adopted a siting ordinance. And that siting ordinance, if you can just back up for 1 second on the slides, lays out those rules and procedures more closely. Tells the county what its responsibilities are when there's an application that is filed and what the timeframes are that have to be complied with. And it tells the applicant the expectations for the application itself. So that original siting ordinance was adopted in 1993. Now we can go ahead and go to the next slide. And it was last updated in 2008. So it hasn't been touched in a while. And there really haven't been any new facilities that have been proposed in the county since 2005. So there hasn't been a reason to look at the ordinance closely. But as we were going through the 2020 solid waste plan update, we got to talking about the requirements that were specified in the solid waste plan for what needs to be in an application and how those align with what's in the pollution control facility siting ordinance. And notice that there were some lack of alignment. There was some inconsistencies, and those requirements that had been in the plan had been there since the 1997 plan update. So we talked about it and decided let's move those out of the plan. Let's only focus on them in the siting ordinance so that we can ensure that we're not creating barriers to facility development and creating conflict for applicants as they come in. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So the way we approached the revisions was we didn't want to change the structure of the ordinance. There is nothing wrong with the structure overall, so we kept it as it was, but we did rearrange and group the requirements for applications, particularly in the section 1158 of the ordinance, to align with what those 9 siting criteria are. This makes it easier for the county to track and review an application as it would come in to make sure that all of the requirements in the ordinance are met. It also makes it easier for an applicant to be able to lay out their case for their facility. So those changes where we just did some rearranging, those are not shown in the red line. We started redlining once we got all of the requirements regrouped, and then made the red line revisions to streamline and to clarify and to bring in elements that had been in the solid waste plan but never made it into the ordinance that we thought were applicable, and to remove some of the requirements that are outdated, onerous, not really necessary or pertinent to the siting criteria. So those are all reflected in the red line version. And then we did look also, Jennifer and Jody had asked me to look at the siting application fees that are specified to see that those are reasonable. They're extremely comparable to all of the fees that are charged or set in other ordinances in surrounding communities and counties. So we did not recommend any changes be made to those application fees. So go ahead and go to the next slide. So the primary changes, we did reduce the number of printed applications that need to be submitted, added requirements for submitting electronic applications. That's pretty standard stuff that you would see an applicant ask to have changed anyway if you ever have a facility that approaches the county. And we identified how those versions would be distributed so that there is clarity if you do have an applicant come in. We incorporated, as I said, those salient requirements from the prior solid waste plan updates and removed some inconsistent requirements. And then we revised the responsibilities for siting review and hearing participation. Historically, it only referenced county staff. It has become the practice across the industry and across the state that typically there will be a technical consultant that would be retained by the siting authority to review the applications. It's extremely technical information and a large volume of information that's submitted. So we made sure to write that into those requirements now as well. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So this is our schedule here today. We're giving the initial presentation at the next meeting of this committee on March 12th. Will be the final presentation and answering of any questions that you have, so that we would hope that there would be adoption at that meeting of these revisions, and then go to County Board April 13th for their adoption of the revisions, so they would be enacted at that point. And that concludes my presentation.
Well, thank you, Christina. So this siting ordinance, I did talk to Jennifer and Jody about this. So it was a cleanup job, more or less, to get it better organized and make it so that it's more user friendly. And if someone does want to come in and needs the approval for a new transfer station or something like that, we're more user friendly.
Yes, yeah, keeping it user friendly, keeping it consistent with the citing criteria, because if there was a opposition or a contested or appealed decision on citing, the Pollution Control Board would be looking at the record. They'd be looking to see what was required in the citing ordinance, but also how that complies or aligns with what the specific statutory citing criteria are. So there were things that were asked for that really aren't applicable, things like copies of your insurance certificates or financial reports from the company, the applicant, that are just kind of an outdated expectation and something that the private sector who is developing these facilities really isn't fond of providing and supplying, and wouldn't necessarily turn them off on a project entirely, but isn't really necessary to the criteria.
Does anybody else have any questions for Christina? So next month, we will be making the resolution to adopt this. correct?
Right. So that's why we wanted to give you a month to review it, because obviously, as Mavis found out, it is quite long and technical. So if you have a chance, and we provided both the red line and the clean version, which is much easier to just read through, and you just jot down some questions, which you can ask next month before the vote. Yeah.
Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you, Christina.
Thank you.
Madam Chairman,
Yes.
Chris Caius, I just wanted to put in, it looks like from when I scanned it, it looked like maybe we're going to save a tree or two just by cutting back on all the paper copies that were acquired in 1997. And maybe we could scale back even a little bit more.
A whole forest, says the Forest Preserve president. So, so thank you for that. Jennifer, do you want to lead us on to our next item on the agenda?
Yep, so this is going to be just a real quick presentation because I know we have limited time today and a very full agenda. So I'm going to move fairly quickly through here. Happy to answer any questions on this. Next slide, please. So household hazardous waste is a term that we use, and HHW is a very common abbreviation, especially in my industry, for it. It's chemicals, household chemicals, fertilizers, pesticides, batteries, medications, auto fluids of any kind like gas or oil or antifreeze, paint, oil-based paint, stains, things like that that you find in a typical garage or basement that are hazardous. Many of them are flammable. So that's what we're talking about here when we say household hazardous waste. The Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, RCRA, which was written in 1976, it bans hazardous waste from the landfills, acknowledging that it's very bad to put them in the landfills because they leach into the groundwater. However, there was an exemption written in for residential quantities that actually exempts residents from that ban. So they can legally put these things in the garbage. However, haulers do not want liquid waste in the garbage. And obviously, the accumulative effect of all the residents putting this stuff in is huge. So it's not good. So this is why, next slide, please, we want to create programs to collect them. And so, you know, education is key in my field. That we really, people want to do the right thing. They just need to know how. So promoting that awareness is really important, and the hazardous waste programs help provide that education, as well as then the actual logistic ability for people to drop things off somewhere. It reduces the amount of hazardous waste in landfills. It limits the amount that is disposed improperly in a variety of ways. Also, there are hazards to it being in your home. It can cause fires, it can cause poisonings. Obviously, in the trash, it's going to create some risk to people that are handling the garbage. Next slide. This is an old slide from an old presentation, so the data is a little bit dated, as you can see there, but you know, poisoning and other risks are many with hazardous waste. So we really want to get those products disposed of properly. Next slide. So there are three main kinds of programs that exist for the collection of hazardous waste, and that's a permanent facility, a home collection program, which is very rare, and one-day events. We have, fortunately in Kane County, a menu of all three, which is very rare. The facility in Naperville, admittedly, is not in Kane County, but it's very close. There are actually only 4 facilities in the entire state of Illinois, and they're all here in the north. So in fact, if you live anywhere south of Naperville, anywhere like Springfield and downstate, Naperville is still your closest facility. You know, so we're very fortunate here to have that at our disposal. It is a free drop off for residents to take things there. It's open every weekend, both Saturday and Sunday. The home collection program is quite unique. Not a lot of places have that, nationally even, but my predecessor, Gary Mielke, set this up years ago for the northern part of Kane County. And I'm using my arrow here, which you of course can't see, but on the map there, the areas at the top, basically everything that's not in gray is part of our home collection program in Kane County. And that is paid for by, well, I'll get to that in the next slide, sorry, but it serves these people who are furthest from Naperville. And then Geneva, Batavia, and Mill Creek have come in later as an added service to their residents in that program. And then the one-day events. sorry, one more thing on that last slide. The one-day events are also rare because they're very, very expensive to put on. The Illinois EPA has some funds to do that. And so they are awarding events to different communities who have submitted applications. And a couple years ago, we got a one-day event that we did in conjunction with South Elgin, and that was an old application. It was like, I think it was a 12-year-old application that had been sitting down in Springfield waiting, and then it came to the top of the pile, and they called me 2 years ago and said, we are going to give you a one-day event. So I immediately submitted another request, thinking, well, better get in line again for another one in 12 years, and it came up again. So we get one this year, which is really exciting, and that will be down in Aurora on June 5th. So that's fantastic. Next slide. Here's a little bit more of the detail. Again, I'm not going to go into it too deeply because of the time that we have, but as you can see, these are the 3 different models, and then you can see how much Kane County, you can see the users, how many dollars per user it costs, and how many dollars per pound of hazardous waste properly disposed it costs, and then the total budget for those programs to be offered. Out of that, you can see how much Kane County is contributing, and then how much the partners are contributing. So these are all just, regional partnerships that are happening to make these programs possible. And you can see the one-day events. The IEPA is $100,000, to put on one of those events. So it's incredibly beneficial for us to. Oh, you know what? That's an old number. It's 52. The last event that we had in South Elgin was 52,000 IEPA actual cost. So that 100,000 is incorrect. I beg your pardon. Old slide information. So anyway,
well, 50,000 is still a lot of money for one day.
Yeah, and we paid $800 for signage and some refreshments for the volunteers. So really good deal for us. All right, next slide. And this is just some of the data from last year, just to finish the presentation off, that we properly disposed of and or recycled 79 tons of hazardous waste through Kane County residential programs. So that's an amazing amount. And the next slide, I think, is the end. So here's more just like pictorial images of over time. You can see that the curbside programs are in the top 2 graphs represented in red, and the Naperville facility users and pounds are represented in blue. You can see that 2020 there is very different from the others because Elgin, the city of Elgin, implemented a program through their waste hauler contract with Waste Management to pick up not only hazardous waste, but also electronics, which are considered hazardous waste. And so it also increased their numbers greatly. And that's why this red line on 2020 at the top is so much bigger. It's because of Elgin's contribution to that program, which is fantastic. That bottom graph is pulled straight out of the Solid Waste Plan 2020 update. And in fact, if you want more information on hazardous waste, go ahead and just go to the Solid Waste Plan, which I linked in the chat here. And it's pages 51 through 54 concern hazardous waste. And then after that, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me at any time. Next slide is the end. All right. So I would just move straight on. Is that all right, Mavis?
Certainly. Go ahead. Any questions about this, the hazardous waste, household hazardous waste? Good work, good information. Go ahead.
Okay. So we have a contract extension resolution before you today for our contract with US Ecology, that is the service provider that provides the home collection program in the northern part of Kane County, Batavia, Geneva, and St. Charles. So again, the amount there of $77,500 is the full maximum contract amount. We don't always use that up. It depends on how many people call for that service. And then also, again, that is offset greatly by the contributions from the municipalities, as you saw in the presentation. So this is the last year of it was a 3-year +2, and this is the final 1-year extension to the existing contract. Business as usual, nothing changed.
Okay, thank you. So are we ready to, would you like me to work on the resolution now? Get the resolution passed? Okay. I would like to entertain a motion to pass this resolution.
Allen moves.
Thank you, Mrs. Allen.
Caius, second.
Thank you, Mr. Caius. Are there any questions, any discussion?
May I speak, Madam Chairman?
Certainly.
This is just an odd anecdote, but we all know from going door to door that you leave information more than you actually get to talk to real people. And during a pandemic, I'm guessing we're not doing much door to door, face to face at all. But believe it or not, in past years when I have done that, I've gotten questions from people about this, and I'm guessing it's because of Jennifer's green guide, and people are just delighted to think that with a phone call, they can get a bag and stick all their stuff in it, and then somebody comes and takes it away by magic. And it's just it's a lovely program to be able to offer.
Thank you. I agree. It's I was in 1990, I was on the Aurora Solid Waste Advisory Committee, helping to invent our recycling program. So I'm a believer, and we all are. So thank you, Jennifer, for all of your great work on this, everything that you have developed. Call the roll, please.
Allen,
Allen,
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Weber,
Yes.
Wonicky,
Yes.
Bates.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Secretary. Okay, go ahead, Jennifer, move right along.
Thank you. So I have one more resolution here today, also related to household hazardous waste. The Plato Township came on last year with an IGA to contribute funds towards this program because their residents all benefit from it. It is also a model IGA as far as, you know, a township contributing to the county funding for programs, not just the hazardous waste, but also all the other programs that we are offering in Kane County that benefit their residents, including the electronics recycling, and also some other programs that are available to our municipal and township partners, like the tire recycling that we do every year internally. So things like that. So this is a really, and it's based on an amount per household per year. And based on their population, they pay $3,780 to the county each year to participate in the hazardous waste collection, home collection, and the other programs. And so this is just a renewal of that same agreement. Tim Moroder from Plato Township texted me this morning and said that their council just approved this IGA yesterday through their channels. So now it's our turn to do that and move it forward for approval from the board. So thank you for considering that.
Okay, excellent. We have this resolution for the intergovernmental agreement. May I have a motion?
So moved. Cheryl Strathman.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wonicky, seconds.
Okay, Strathman moves, Wonicky seconds. Is there any discussion? Any questions?
Madam Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Hi, Caius?
Go ahead.
Yeah, just this appears that it is self-funded. Is that what you said, Jennifer, that the residents in Plato pay for it?
Well, that's a good catch on a technicality. So it is based on an amount, which is $3 per household per year that they are paying into it. But I believe, okay, and that fund in some of our other contributions for the hazardous waste program that actually comes through the hauler contract, the curbside hauler contract that the municipality or township has. There's a clause written in there that says that the hauler shall pay the contracting entity an amount per household per year to cover the costs of having hazardous waste programs, because they don't want to deal with it in their trash bins, right, or in their loads. So that is a pass-on fee. Most usually the hauler will then, you know, bill that out to the residents at $3 per household per year. It's cents on the bill. and then that accumulates and then it's contributed to the county for programs. However, in this particular case, I believe that Plato Township had an account somewhere that was savings for programs like this that they are drawing from at this time. So right now, I believe it's from their own funding.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or discussion? I think it's always a good idea to approve getting money from other places, so would argue with this. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll, please?
Yes, ma'am. Alan?
Alan, I, we're also
Caius?
always grateful for.
More money.
Caius?
Okay, Caius, yes. I'm
Molina?
nodding.
Molina, yes.
Strathman?
Strathman, yes.
Weber?
Yes.
Warnicki?
Yes.
Bates?
Yes.
Passes.
Okay, thank you, Madam
Officially,
Secretary.
Caius, yes. Sorry, couldn't get the mute button.
It's a little button. Okay, thank you, Jennifer. Then I think we've got Ivy is up next.
Good morning, everybody. I'm just going to be giving a quick update on some events that I'm currently in the process of planning. Next slide, please. So the annual One Earth Film Festival is coming up. I believe we've been a part of the One Earth Film Festival for a couple years now. It's the 10th anniversary of the film festival, and it's going to be taking place March 5th through the 14th. And then we are going to be co-sponsoring a film on March 13th, a film called Kiss the Ground. You can see there's the picture there. And I believe actually Jessica was the one to suggest that we, sponsor this film. So the film is going to be put on March 13th at 11 a.m. We are co-sponsoring with the Fox River Ecosystem Partnership and then also the Conservation Foundation and a few other co-sponsors. But again, this is just one film out of a bunch that are going to be held virtually through that week. And so I'm going to be putting out advertising for signing up for the One Earth Film Festival and also to see the specific film that we are going to be sponsoring. I'm hoping to get that out next week. So I'll send that all out to you guys, and then hopefully we can also publicize that on Kane County Connects. So, folks can sign up for that and we can get the word out about this awesome event. Does anybody have any questions on the film festival?
People tell me this is like the best movie they've ever seen in their lives.
Really? That's awesome.
So
I'm excited. I've never seen it before. I think it's supposed to be about, an inspiring documentary with, information about the climate crisis and
and regenerative farming, I think, ag.
Oh, awesome.
Sierra Club is also sponsoring this, so we're happy to have, so we're all partners in this. Okay.
I'm excited. It'll be awesome. Next slide, please. And so also I'm in the process of planning the Rain Barrel program for 2021. Normally, I think in the past, this event has been put on in May. Last year, there was a no contact pickup event. And so we're going to be doing the same thing this year. So as of right now, the tentative date that I'm planning for is May 18th for this pickup date. But there's going to be an online period, I believe, from the beginning of April until mid-May. Folks will be able to order rain barrels and other supplies online. We're going to be coordinating with the Conservation Foundation and also Upcycle Products. So they're going to, Upcycle provides the rain barrels and also the other supplies that everyone can order. And we're going to be coordinating with the Conservation Foundation to help staff the pickup event.
Can can I jump in? I'm so sorry to interrupt you, Ivy, but I spoke with Jessica Mino at the Conservation Foundation, and she's working Kendall Kane now, and she's saying that we can wrap in a compost bin sale with this. So I don't know if you.
Oh, yes.
I wanted to just mention to the committee that this is also going to include compost bins.
Awesome.
Good.
So I don't have the information on pricing for those things yet. I think I'm going to be getting the link. So there's going to be a Kane County's link that will be specific to us for ordering the rain barrels and also the compost bins. And then, you know, throughout the online order period, folks can have their rain barrels or compost bins or whatever other supplies directly ordered to their house, or they can order online and then pick up, you know, no contact pickup at this event in May, hopefully on May 18th, we'll see.
Okay.
And we're coordinating with the Forest Preserve to use the Leroy Oaks parking lot as the venue.
Good.
So if anyone has any questions, please let me know. Those are 2 events on the agenda for right now.
Okay,
I have
thank
a
you.
comment.
Mhm.
Go ahead. Sure, go ahead.
Comment. Yeah, I got my barrels last year, so I won't be participating this year, and I got 1 each. I had 1 mailed and 1 I picked up, and both worked really well. If you have
great.
a smaller cart, keep in mind they do take up a lot of space. So it was a good thing I ordered 1 and had the other one delivered. I don't know if it might, but it was a good program. It was very handy and easy either way.
Good. I'm glad.
Great. I got mine a year or 2 ago. I was at the Conservation Foundation for something else, and this beautiful rain barrel was sitting there, so I put it in the back of my car. They're very beautiful too.
I hope you paid for it, Mavis.
I did.
Oh, okay.
By the way.
Sounded like maybe you just picked it up.
No, it wasn't just sitting there in their yard. It was, it had a nice stand from the Eagle Scouts to put it on. Okay, thank you, Ivy. Anything else for us from Ivy, from you, Ivy?
No, that's it.
Okay, and I think we have 1 more slide. Karen, are you next? Karen?
Just dropped off. Did we lose her?
She was on a moment ago. She seemed to
Yeah.
drop off. Maybe she'll be popping back on here.
Okay, we'll give her a second.
This is Deborah, Madam Chairman. I have a question for Mr. Caius. Chris, have you attended this before? The Fox
Yeah,
River
actually,
Summit?
I was just thinking about unmuting. The year before last, I was able to drive. It was up, I think, in Burlington, Wisconsin, the day for the Fox River.
Thought I remembered you
And there
talking
were,
about it.
Yeah, there were several seminars, a day-long event up in Burlington. It was really interesting. We had a number of presentations on watershed and regenerative farming, clean water, and the Fox River. So,
Thanks for attending for us.
Are you planning on attending again, Chris?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
I think
I hope-
all of us should try if we can. Well, let's move on. If Karen comes back, is there anything here? Yeah, let's just go ahead. Okay, Jody.
Thank you. And I know we're running tight on time with a meeting after ours, so I will probably go through our slides fairly quickly here, and then maybe we can have discussion at the March meeting. So with the direction of the committee last month, we put together some slides on the funding sources for our sustainability and recycling programs. Next slide, please. I wanted to include the mission of our department that kind of reviews the importance of recycling and sustainability programs that we implement through our division. Next slide, please. I also wanted to include our budget slides, specifically because these will be the slides that you will see in our budget presentation in August for any new board members. What we've been doing with these slides specifically, we have the Enterprise Surcharge Fund as the first slide that's up, is adding some notations to the bottom of these slides over the last few years. So the county board, when you're reviewing our budget, can specifically see how much money we're being depleted in that fund every year. And then we previously mentioned, this fund was the landfill fund. So all the tipping fees from the landfill went into this fund originally. There was an agreement with the city of Geneva to build out that Siddler's Hill property after the landfill was closed. And the completion of the cross-country course on the landfill site last year dropped their fund amount by about $4 million. And in doing so, the amount of interest that we're earning on the remaining balance is no longer able to cover the expenses. And so what we're seeing is that every year we're depleting that fund more and more. And at that point, we're entering the discussion of how we continue these programs with that depleting fund. So what you're seeing up there is at the bottom, in 2020, we depleted the fund by $74,000. Even though we made additional reductions to our budget, the 2021 fund depletion amount actually increased to $116,000. The reason for this is that the projected interest rate by the treasurer's office was significantly lower for 2021 than it was for 2020. And as we're relying more on that interest and our balance has gone down, it was kind of a double whammy. Next slide, please. The other budget slide you'll see for these programs that are under our sustainability and recycling is the cost share drainage and NPDES, specifically the NPDES portion. Ivy Klee of our staff runs that program. This is a mandated program under IEPA that we're required to maintain an active MS4 permit for our stormwater discharges. So this program is required, but also it's a program that relies heavily on the riverboat funding to move those programs forward. Next
Jody,
slide, please.
Jody, what's NDPS?
National Pollution Discharge Elimination System. And
Thank
so it's specific to any Kane County properties that have storm drainage and our Kane County Division of Transportation rights of way that discharge water out of storm sewer systems. So the intent behind the program is to educate the public on ways to improve water quality, and then do best management practices such as sensible salting and street sweeping and other types of maintenance and your KDOT roadside pickup of garbage. Those all fall under our mandates for our MS4 permit.
Thank you.
So to quickly go through our recycling and sustainability income sources. So you're reading across, even though I do have bullet points on both sides. So for the hauler's fee, we actually increased that fee. This is our haulers that drive around and collect garbage in Kane County. We increased the fee in 2019. So that went from a $4,000 revenue to $16,000 revenue. The electric charging stations, we get about $500 of revenue for those, but they're also offset by the cost of the program. So that's basically a net zero revenue for us. Same thing with Jennifer's great presentation on household hazardous waste. We have a cost for the program, but we're also offsetting and we're trying to balance the costs with the revenue that we're obtaining from Geneva, Batavia, Plato Township, and the other ones that Jennifer mentioned. We have investment income. That's the number you saw on that budget slide. That obviously varies with the interest rate each year. So some years we're covering more of that deficit than we're other years, such as what is being projected for 2021. We have some miscellaneous revenue in there. And then these are our big numbers that we're trying to support the programs with, unfortunately, is the riverboat funding. That the Office of Community Reinvestment is expecting to be less than 50% of what we received in the past due to the pandemic. And then also the NPDES is heavily funded by the riverboat funding at the $65,000. Next slide, please. Then I went through in detail our expenses. The 650 expenses are the expenses coming specifically out of that enterprise surcharge fund, which is the fund that is being depleted from the revenue from the old landfill. So we have some salaries and benefits in there. The household hazardous waste program, which is pretty close to offset by income. Our county-wide recycling programs. We have a landfill consultant. They review all the IEPA permits that are submitted on a yearly basis on our behalf to ensure that they're in compliance with the IEPA requirements and waste management. The EV charging stations, we have a budget of $7,500 for that a year. We have our collection event costs, which are our events that we run out in St. Charles and have now moved to Campton Township and Aurora to kind of increase the usership of those collection events. We have the Fox Valley Sustainability Network sponsorship, our charging station networking fee, the Green Guide, miscellaneous supplies, and miscellaneous expenses. Next slide, please. So to detail out the NPDES expenses, our main expense in that program is our stream gauges. These are stream gauges on the Fox River that we partner with USGS to maintain. Due to the budget reduction in the riverboat last year, we negotiated a reduction in our USGS contract for 1 year, but they expect that that is only going to be for the single year. They need to actually cover their expenses for that. These stream gauges go back close to 30 years of data, and they're used to predict our flooding and climate change issues as we go forward and receive more rainfall in shorter time periods. They're very important to the modeling and the floodplain analysis along the Fox River. We also have some smaller expenses in that program that Ivy does a great job of pushing out for public education, which is our pollution prevention program, our river monitoring and cleanup program, our classroom education, and our clean water protection and our NPDES permit fee. Next slide, please. So next steps, when the cross-country course was originally constructed, there was an informal agreement with some of the county board members to continue to move some of the salaries that are under that 650 fund into the general fund because of the $4 million expense for that cross-country course and not being able to cover the expenses under that special revenue source any longer. So if there's no objection, we'd like to continue to do that. We're also actively pursuing any state legislation that would increase funding into that revenue, which would be specifically right now the state bag fee and the bottle deposit legislation that could potentially be a sustainable source of income for that fund. We are also looking at reducing our programming fee in anticipation of the significant reduction in the riverboat funds for 2022. As Jennifer had previously presented, we did just a pamphlet for the recycling guide this year, and that significantly reduced our expenses for the green guide for coming into 2022. We also are pursuing any additional ideas that kind of come in our direction for long-term revenue for the programs, as well as looking for matching grants for dollars that would be able to be stretched for matching our riverboat funding or matching our enterprise surcharge fund funds to stretch that funding any further. So that concludes my presentation on the financial aspects of the recycling and sustainability programs. I know we're running late, so if any of the committee members have any questions or would like any further detail on any of the numbers that I presented, please get a hold of me and we can continue the conversation next month. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wolnick. So as all of our members can see, we definitely need to find more funding sources, or at least stretch the funding sources that we have today. I have a couple of comments that I'm going to try to squeak in, and hope Jobs forgives me, but I'm going to call these comments from the chair. For transparency, I want the committee to know some of the other projects that I and the staff are working on. One is that we're pursuing a grant. We just found out about a grant that we can apply for from the Illinois Green Energy Community Foundation. For the grant is for putting solar panels on first responder buildings. So since we have a beautiful new multi-use facility, which has a solar-ready roof, we're pursuing that grant. And of course, we won't find out about that for a while, but I want you to know about it. We are considering trying to have a plan for a more permanent recycling center, possibly on land having to do with the Fabian property. This is still a little dream that we've got, but we're going to be talking about that some more. The climate action plan, and we're also going to be doing an Earth Month activities. I have to talk to Mr. Nagel about this, but we'd like to put this into the Kane County Connects. So if anybody wants to help with any of these projects, please let me know. And thank you for your participation in the Energy and Environmental Committee committee. So I will entertain a motion to adjourn, please.
Ms. Bates, I
Yes.
see that Karen is back on. Maybe she could give a quick.
Oh, good. Sure, Karen, please.
I'm so sorry. We must have had a brief power glitch just as Ivy was finishing up. Good timing.
Always happens.
Anyway, thank you for coming back to me. So the Fox River Summit, first held in 2013, has become an annual event between the Fox River Ecosystem Partnership and our fellow Fox River stakeholders in Wisconsin. Unfortunately, the 8th annual summit in March 2020 was canceled. The Fox River Summit has always been an opportunity to share and connect, discuss issues and successes, and most importantly, have fun. One of the major projects that came out of these summits has been the fabulous Fox Water Trail. This year, the 9th annual Fox River Summit will be held virtually on Thursday, March 11th as part of Wisconsin Water Week. Please join us for a day of education and networking by registering at southeastfoxriver.org. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Southeastriver.org.
Southeastfoxriver.org.
Oops, I lost my Fox. Foxriver.org. Thank you, Karen. Welcome back.
Thanks.
Now, may I have a motion to adjourn?
Madam Chairman, can I just jump in for a second? It's Deborah Allen again.
Yes, please.
I just want to get this into the ether. I know the Riverboat Fund is challenged because of the pandemic, but we got a few $100,000 more last year than we expected. So rather than spend that on expenses for 2020, we put them aside so that they would be available in 2021. So it's just a tiny bit of buffer to help with that. And since Mr. Caius is in charge of the Riverboat Committee this year, it's so great to have him on E&E and to have his particular interest in this. But there's always a battle in the internal requests. And I think it's just important that we all think about that we value our cost share programs, that it helps people all over the county. And these programs that have to do with the Fox River and with our sustainability help everybody all through the county. So these programs should not be diminished in any way when the committee is looking at the various requests. Not to say that the state's attorney's office isn't important, not to say that there aren't other demands on the money, but these programs are equally important. And so we just want to keep it in everybody's head that these are directions we've opted to go in, and we want to continue to do that as best as we can. Thanks for letting me talk to that, Madam Chairman.
Oh, thank you, Mrs. Allen. Let's talk some more about that. That's your institutional wisdom never ceases to amaze me. Now, are there any more comments from the committee? Shall I ask for a motion to adjourn?
Madam
Please.
Chair,
Yes.
we need a motion for the reports to be placed on file.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. May I have a motion to put the reports placed on file?
Weber will move.
Strathman?
Weber will second.
Okay, you can pick, Madam Secretary. Strathman. Did you get some names?
Strathman and Weber.
That's fine, thank you. Voice vote or
Roll call.
roll call, please?
Allen,
Alan,
Caius,
Caius, yes.
Molina,
Molina, yes.
Strathman,
Strathman, yes.
Weber,
Yes.
Winnicki,
Yes.
Bates.
Yes. Thank you. And now,
Weber will move to adjourn.
thank you, Mr. Weber. And second, please.
Molina,
Strathman, second.
seconds.
Melina, seconds. Call the roll. Oh, no, voice vote?
This one is a voice vote.
Aye.
Thank you. All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everybody. Let's keep up the good work. Thank
Thank you.
you.
Thank you.